You said earlier that Hawking had this very important result that the event horizon of a black hole can never decrease. But, of course, this was overturned later. And I'm wondering how this comes after what Bekenstein discovered and then how this relates to the information paradox.
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's a wonderful story that goes with that, which is that when Bekenstein made this proposal, it actually fit quite nicely with some work that Hawking and others had done. I already mentioned the area theorem. Hawking and others had also found that black holes in some other ways behave like thermodynamic objects. They had even identified sort of analogs to all the known laws of thermodynamics. So the area law was sort of supposed to be the analog of the second law of thermodynamics. And there's a first law of thermodynamics which involves the temperature. It relates the increase in entropy to the increase in energy of an object through the temperature. That's sort of what defines the temperature of an object. And they found that black holes satisfy a similar looking law, but they absolutely refused to say, the area law really is a second law for black holes. The temperature that we find in this law really is the temperature of a black hole. Why did they refuse to say this? Or that the entropy is really an entropy? They wanted this to be an analog. Why? Because if a black hole had a temperature, it would have to radiate. Objects that have a temperature, they emit radiation. And everybody knew that black holes are things that just swallow stuff up but don't emit anything, right? So it seemed absurd. Of course, that was it was a mistake to think that way, because that property of black holes that they don't emit anything is a classical property. And what they were implicitly studying were the quantum properties of black holes. But they were very much against taking this analogy, as beautiful as it was and everything fit, too literally. And then Bekenstein came and said, well, I propose for totally different reasons that black holes really have an entropy. And even Bekenstein didn't go far enough to say, well, if black holes have an entropy, then because they have an energy, their mass, they must have a temperature, which we can actually which you can calculate. Right? He could have predicted Hawking radiation just based on that, up to some overall factor that he wouldn't have been able to fix. But the phenomenon as such, he would have been able to predict. Even Bekenstein shied away from that. And meanwhile, Hawking completely dismissed Bekenstein's idea because it couldn't possibly be true that black holes radiate, and he understood that that would be the implication. And then, for totally different reasons, Hawking did a calculation like a year or two later, in which he was trying to understand how much black holes enhance radiation that might come past them when they rotate. There's a sort of classical effect that was known that black holes can sort of give energy to objects that sort of graze them if the black holes rotate and you do the grazing in just the right way. And Hawking decided to calculate what happens to quantum fields, the more fundamental description of matter that we have. And he found that there's some residual radiation that's present even when the black hole doesn't radiate at all. And he immediately understood, so black holes really do radiate. You don't need to send anything in. They send stuff out. And of course, at that point, it became clear that everything really does fit together, and Bekenstein was right, and black holes are these objects with all these real properties, temperature, entropy, that all objects really have. And so, yeah, it was a convoluted story. It was like most discoveries in science. It went in a meandering way, maybe, but in the end, it fit together very beautifully.